Hello students, today we will do your theme 2, that is Kings, Farmers and Towns, Early Stats and Economists, 600 BCE to 600 CE. Let's read it out. There were several developments in different parts of the subcontinent during the long span of 1500 years following the end of this Harappan civilization. This was also the period during which the Rig Veda was composed by the people living along the Indus and its tributaries. Agricultural settlements emerged in many parts of the subcontinent, including North India, the Deccan Plateau, and parts of this Karnataka. So from the 6th century BCE, there is evidence that there were other trends as well. Perhaps the most visible was the emergence of these early states, empires and kingdoms. So new towns appeared almost throughout the subcontinent during those periods. So historians attempt to understand this development by drawing errands of these sources like inscription, texts, coins and visual materials. Harappan civilization top nu khan subcontinent khomwal pui mun sang sanga khan mason nasataka thlengani heti hun lai hian Rigveda hi Indus lui kama chengten an phua ani tributaries kan ti chuan lui peng sang ti nani thloma la in ramte an ron lua chana abik takin North India te Deccan Plateau te Karnataka ate thloma lak mai pialama khan ran rual enkol tu te pokha an ombok ani ti chuan 6th century atang khan ram rorel tu pol lalber op ramzau takte an ron din chawa historians then heti taka mason hi hriat thiam le hriat fia tumin thuziak te le khabu te poisa thir te an hmanrua te an hmu thei ang kha lakhomin an mason na kachui chian tumin thei top chhoi nan be ani. And next we go to Princeps and Piyadasi. Some of the most momentous development in Indian epigraphy took place in the 1830s. This was when James Princeps, an officer in the Mint of the East India Company, deciphered Brahmi and Kharosthi. And two script used in the earliest inscriptions and coins, he found that most of these mentions a king referred to as Piyadasi, meaning pleasant to behold. There were a few inscriptions which also referred to the king as Asoka, one of the most famous rulers known from these Buddhist texts. Indian Ramachuan, hey inscription Tuzia ki 1830s vel khan maron son chawin hun poimo tak aron lua a heti hun lai hian James Princeps hi East India Company a poisa cherna thok officer pakhat ania Brahmi le Kharosthi script kan ti chuan Thuzia kha aletani he script ale hi poisa thir a Thuzia nan te an lo mang thina chuan Thuzia ale lin a amu ne ber chu Piyadasi ti hini Piyadasi omzia chu lalshon nuam ti nani hei hi Asoka ansoina ania Asoka hi Buddhist text in tarlan dan phei chuanin lalro puile mingthang ber ati hialani o chuan kan hriat tur chu inscription masaber hi prakrit tongazia ani ti kha kan lo shedonia o. Next we go to the earliest stats. The 16th Mahajanapadas. The 6th century BC is often regarded as a major turning point in the history of India. It is an era associated with the early state cities, the growing use of iron, the developments of coinage. It also witnessed the growth of diverse systems of thoughts, including Buddhism and Jainism, and also the 16 states known as the Mahajanapadas. Among these, Vaji, Magadha, Koshala, Kuru, Panchala, Gandhara, and Avanti were the most important Mahajanapadas. While these most Mahajanapadas were ruled by kings, some known as these Ganas or Sanghas were oligarchies where power was shared by a numbers of men and these were collectively called Rajas. And from this 6th century onwards, Brahmanas began composing Sanskrit texts known as the Dharma Sutras. This laid down the norms for these rulers as well as for the social categories. Okay? 16 Mahajanapadas, 16 states, tinane. 6th century he Indian history a chuan hun poimo in chan hun ti ania achan chu khopui te lo pianga iron te an ron mang chho chan boka poisa thir ni se na satakin ma ron son chovin anril rungai tu anate aron zawa ideas sang sang an ron nei chana khami khan buddhism te jainism te aron pian chwa pha ta ne chuan he 16 states and states poimo zwal big te chu Vaji, Magadha te Koshala, Kuru, Panchala, Gandhara le Avanti te hian ni. Khati hun chung khan Mahajanapadas khan lalin rawarela state chen khata chuan oligarchies kan ti mitlem te tangrualin an ramro kha an rel bok ani ti chuan 6th century atang khanin Brahmana stan Sanskrit text Dharma Sutras an phua he lekhabua hianin lalina ati turte vantlang mi puitena an zom turte kha an phau chuak ani. And next we go to first amongst the 16th Magadha, page 31. Between the 6th and the 4th century BC, Magadha, present-day Bihar, became the most powerful Mahajanapadas. Magadha was a region where agriculture was especially productive. Besides, iron mines were accessible and provided resources for tools and weapons. Elephant also, and important components of this army were found in the forests of this region as well. Magadha attributed its powers to the policies of these individual, ruthlessly ambitious kings of whom they were Bimbisara, Ajatasattu, and Mahapadmananda were the best known, and their ministers who helped implement their policies during this period. And initially, Rajagaha was the capital of this Magadha. 6th le 4th century in Karvel khan Mahajanapada zinga 16 state zinga khan Magadha hi state chakper le thil ti theiber ania Magadha rambial khan thlo mate la in anthar chuak tam hle bok ani chumi pia lama chuan iron mines te nein siam shei man ruate le ral thuam te an siam chuaka sai ni se an ram ngo khan mu tur tam taka omani mo army lama an ral thuam poimo tak lo ni le bok nen Magadha an lal ro pui berle ngai san lo big MMA te chu Bimbisara te Ajatasattu te Mahapadmananda te yan ni chuan Rajagaha hi Magadha capital ani. Next we go to an early empire. The growth of Magadha culminated in the emergence of the Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta Maurya, who founded the empire in 321 BCE, extended control as far northwest as Afghanistan and Balochistan, and his grandson Asoka was the most famous ruler of the early Indian conquered Kalinga, present-day coastal Orissa. And let's see finding out about the Mauryans. Historians have used a variety of sources to reconstruct the history of this Mauryan Empire. including these archaeological finds, especially these sculptures. Also valuable are contemporary works such as the accounts of this Megasthenes, a Greek ambassador to the court of this Chandragupta Maurya, and this Arthasastra, parts of which were probably composed by Kautilya or Chanakya, who is believed to be the ministers of this Chandragupta. Besides the Mauryan, are mentioned in the later Buddhist, Jaina and Puranic literature as well as the Sanskrit literature works. While these are useful, the inscriptions of Asoka on rocks and pillars are often regarded as the most valuable sources. Okay, Asoka was the first ruler who inscribed his message to his subjects and officials on stone surface, natural rocks as well as polished pillars. Okay, and he used these inscriptions to proclaim what he understood to be Dhamma. This Dhamma includes respect towards elders, generosity towards brahmanas and those who renounce worldly life, treating slaves and servants kindly, and respect for these religions and traditions other than one's own. Okay, and let's go to administering the empire. There were 5 major political centers in this empire. The capital was Pataliputra and the provincial centers of Taxila, Ujjayini, Tosali and Suvarnagari. These states are all mentioned. These are all mentioned in this Asokan inscription. And about this, let's go to these communications. Communications along both land and river and roads was vital for the existence of the empire. Journey from the centers to the provinces could have taken weeks, if not months. Magadha hi avortop lo theng chawin Mauryan lalram lo lan chuana ania Chandragupta hi he lalram hu chuak tu ania Afghanistan le Baluchistan thlengin an han op ani Chandragupta tu pa chu Asoka nia nialrual lawin an hun lai khan lalram nei zinga chuan aro pui berani mo Kalinga tuna chuanin coastal Orissa kan ti te khu atne ani. Historians then sourced chi sang mangin Mauryan empire hi din thar reconstruct an tumani milim kerte le Megasthenes thil chinchia nabu atangte Arthasastra bu atangte Buddhist te Jaina le Puranic thu le la atangten Mauryan chanchin hi an la khomani chumi zinga thuziak changkai ber chu Asokan inscription hi ni. Asoka hian lungpui le rock le nge bansanga khanin thuziak phauchuak ani mo chuan kha Asokan inscription thuziaka an manna ber chu Asoka's Dhamma puanzarnan ani. Kha inscription thuziaka historians te po khanin Mauryan empire reconstruct nan khan an lo mang tangkai em ti nani chu. Okay, administering the empire khan soile lokila an lalram in enkol na lama ni se ramro rel na an state poimo tak panga alaya anda chungte chu Taxila, Ujjayini, Tosali, Suvarnagiri, Pataliputra te ani. Pataliputra hi an capital ania hi Asokan inscription akhanin soitel ani bok ani. Hemi state panga hianin an ramro rel na hi achak bik ani. Inkalpo na lam pangkha en le lokila communications lam inkalpo na le inbiak po na lama ni se tuikong le kongpa ngai an mang ve boka an rambial tlo tura an zin hianin an thang rei thei wang hle ni chan chu khati hun lai khanin motor te thlona te lom ve si lova an nge an journey chung hi 1 week ani lo ponin 1 month te po are an journey chung kha huam thin ani. And next we go to this: how important was the empire? Many of these historians found the message of Asokan inscriptions very different from that of most other rulers, suggesting that Asoka was more powerful and industrious, and also more humble than later rulers who adopted grandiose titles. So, it is not surprising that nationalist leaders in the 20th centuries regarded him as an inspiring figure. Next is new notions of kinship. Chiefs and kings in the south, chiefs and chiefdom. A chief is a powerful man whose positions may or may not be hereditary. He derives support from his kin's flock. His functions may include performing special rituals, leadership in warfare, and arbitrating disputes. He receives gifts from his subordinates, unlike kings who usually collect taxes and often distribute these among his supporters. Generally, there are no regular armies and officials in his chiefdoms. Okay? Historians tam takin Asokan inscription na an muangin rorel tudang laldang ain Asoka hi thil ti thei taima lal in ngai tlom tak an te ni mo an mu da na ni chu 20th century nationalist leader te chuanin mi ti tha tho tu mo aram mi pui te kai shwai thiamin chakna pe tu an ti hialani Asoka kha chuan chief hi thil ti thei ber an nia an din mun hi in thla chawng thei emo thei lo po ani theia alai chin unau ten an thlopa a thaw ber chu sakhawrong bolna khan akai shwai tu ber ania in do na ani se ma shwai tu ani boka buaina chingfel tu ani boka anhuaya thok tu te atangin thilpek chi hrang hrang ten dong thin ani chief chungsang hi sangam texa khanin ahlathu in zialan alo ni to bok ani. Divine kings. These strategies is exemplified by the Kushanas, who ruled over the vast kingdom extending from the Central Asia to northwest India. Their history has been reconstructed from inscriptions and textual traditions. Okay. Hi mizo tungin kan soi zau zok benga an lal te hi an pathian ema a soi fia na chaber chu Kusanas lal first century khan la ramzau tak opin an history hi inscription atangin din tharle ania he Kusanas lal lim hi met mathura bula mu tura om nge ani Kusanas lal tam takhian an ni na neya chumi chu son of God anin ti ni pathian fa pa ni in anin chalani chuan kan soi mai lo tur chu Prayaga Parshasti Allahabad pillar inscriptions hi Sanskrit chongin Harishena ani Harishena phua ania hi Samudra Gupta rorel na laphua thiam ania Samudra Gupta hi Gupta ruler te zinga chuanin thil thi thei ber ani khati song kha voina kanzir thei nia next class page 37 atangin kan chhun zom le don nia thank you all.